So, assalamu alaikum. Haru Nefer Hetepu. This is Kasankma Keparu with another live broadcast for you. And actually, today I want to talk about the Cosby verdict. But before I do that, I want you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if this is your first time watching, and share this video with family and friends because it's important that we get the revolution started. Now, let me just adjust my microphone here. I got a little bit of a cold. Well, actually, I'm getting over a cold, so excuse me if I sound a little stuffy. And it's also a bit hot here, so we'll make do. Now, I wanted to address the situation with the Cosby verdict. Now, normally I don't comment on current affairs or current news like this because I believe that the mainstream media, they are not what you would see in movies like with Superman Lois Lane, the investigative reporter, which she goes out there and she finds the facts and she uncovers the truth, which is what our media is supposed to be doing. But when you turn to different media sources, you'll see that they're all kind of parroting the same narrative, and that there's no one out there who is actually investigating the truth, reporting the facts, because they will get marginalized, they will get fired. So don't expect to watch your mainstream media news to get the truth of the matter in anything. I'm not just talking about the Cosby case, I'm talking about whatever. You know, if you're looking for what's really going on with global warming, what's really going on with Trump, you're not going to find that in the mainstream news because they are hell-bent on reporting lies. You know, just basically mind manipulation and a consensus of a certain narrative. All right, and they're also open to ratings. So when you're ratings based, means that you're competing against other news stations or other television stations. So that means that you have to be you have to be more dramatic and fear-based in the way that you approach stories. So it's all about incorporating fear into their stories, so you could tune in. It's like, you know, for example, earthquake, thousands of people die, you know, story at 8. So they have to continually pump out those type of stories to get your attention, to get the ratings and the views. And nowadays what we're seeing is that mainstream media news is competing against the alternative sources, which is like the internet and other individuals who are reporting the news and have their own YouTube stations and are trying to get the truth out there. Democracy Now! Is another alternative that you can tune into that I think has a bit more of a balanced approach. The BBC News, I think, still is reporting falsehoods, well, in my view, but they also do go a long way in revealing the truth on certain issues. But as far as the American media news, they're not investigative reporters. They're not looking for the truth. They're just fostering the mainstream narrative that's being put out there by sources like the Associated Press. And what you have to also understand is the big news media stations are all owned, and it's a monopoly. It's basically, you know, the few, like Rupert Murdoch controls a lot of the media outlets, so you're not going to get your free and independent press, you know. So I would highly advise that you go on and do your own research on the internet and try and find out what's behind a lot of the things. Now, speaking of the Cosby verdict and the whole trial, if you're not aware of it, Bill Cosby was accused by multiple women of in some cases drugging them, other cases sexual assault, sexual harassment, and many of these cases the statute of limitations has passed, but they, I guess, passed new laws to where they now can bring these courts to case. And in some of the cases, I think in one of the cases, the woman who took a settlement rather than going to court is you know, signed a contract saying, hey, you know what, I won't go to court, I won't sue him, I'll take this money. And even with that, she's now recanted and going to court and testifying, which is why you'll find that the latest news reports that Bill Cosby has received something like 3 to 10 years of a prison sentence. So actually, let's go into that. Now, let me just say this before we get into the details of this whole thing, is that I'm not for or against the verdict. You know what I mean? Because as a Kemetic and one of spiritual culture, I just want to be the observer. I just want to observe it and just allow what is happening to form an impression upon my spirit. But I'm not taking a side, and I'm not getting emotional over the verdict, and I'm going to explain why. But let's look at what has happened here with Bill Cosby. And he's America's favorite dad. He did the Cosby Show. He's done Fat Albert. He's donated, I think, about $20 million to HBCUs, that's historically black colleges. So he's done a lot of good philanthropy with his money, So let's look at what the thing says here. So it says, basically, Bill Cosby sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison for sexual assault. And you see him being led out in basically handcuffs. So there was just no playing around with him. So it says, CNN, Bill Cosby, once known as America's dad, was sentenced Tuesday to 3 to 10 years in state prison for drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constant at his home 14 years ago. Cosby's bail was revoked and he was escorted from the courthouse in handcuffs. This was a serious crime, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania Judge Stephen O'Neill said. Mr. Cosby, this has all circled back to you. The day has come, the time has come. Cosby, convicted in April of aggravated indecent assault, declined to speak with the court prior to the sentence. His attorneys have filed an appeal, and you see him right now. I believe Cosby is like around 81 years old. And the interesting thing about it is Cosby, along with his sentence, has to pay, I think, the prosecution's legal fees. So he not only if he was denied bail, he has to pay their legal fees. Really interesting. And the 3 to 10 years is basically a death sentence for him, because he's very frail, he's old. But what I want you to understand, and again, I'm saying I'm not for or against Cosby in any way. Okay, this is just me reporting on what's happening. Is that there are, and I've said this a number of times because my background is filmmaking. I've been in a Hollywood inner circle, so I know that there are Hollywood secret societies, and I can go on and talk about the pedophiles and the sex cults and and along with the music industry, because we know there's satanic worship and things like that. But these secret societies, you're either going to play along with them or they're going to destroy you. And for a long time, Cosby has been on their hit list. If you recall, several years ago, his son was killed in what they are robbed along a highway, what they think was a robbery. So I'm not saying that, let me just go back. I'm not saying that these secret societies had targeted Bill Cosby and this is what's really behind it. But what I'm trying to tell you is you need to keep an open mind. And I think that what we're witnessing right now, as we're seeing right now, is a concerted effort that's out to get him. When you have things like the statute of limitations, this woman getting a settlement, then coming back and testifying even after she got a settlement, you got to wonder, and on all of these women, which is like taking a bunch of stuff and throwing against the wall and hoping something sticks, which is what the prosecution was doing. You have to wonder and say, well, was this really a fair trial, or are there powerful forces out there trying to get Bill Cosby? Was it because he tried to buy NBC? We don't know. I don't know. This is something that we is up for speculation. So what I'm saying is that there needs to be a real investigation as to what's going on, because anytime you see this concerted effort out there to get someone, then you have to start questioning things. And to be honest, if you want to start this whole thing, what we call as the Me Too movement, there are many, many other men and women in Hollywood who are just as guilty. You know what I mean? who probably have even more damning evidence against them than Cosby. So let's play fair here, and if we're gonna go after Cosby, then let's go after the others as well, and put them behind bars with the same fervor and aggressiveness that we're doing with Cosby. So let me greet everybody in the chat room, and I want to thank you. So Hatepu, Deborah, Sue-Ann, how's it going? Namaste, Nikki, Hatepu. Oh wow, we have GK Sigma Male in the house, Hatepu. So thanks everybody. Mike, Huru Nefer, thanks for joining us. And again, if you guys get an opportunity, please feel free to donate to the channel. Your donation is always appreciated, and it helps me to write more ebooks and do more broadcasts. But now, as you know, because I'm into the occult, and I am a priest, a spiritual magician, whatever you want to call it, a shaman, I'm going to take a very different approach to this verdict. I'm going to talk about it in a very different way. And as I said before, I have no dog in this race, so I really don't care how it goes. Have I watched the Cosby Show and Fat Albert? Yes, I grew up on those things. Actually, I think I told you guys in my previous broadcast, I actually met Bill Cosby several years ago, and I found him to be quite a nice guy. He and I talked for just a short bit, and I got an opportunity to go to a taping of the Cosby Show, so it was fun. But I want to talk about the system of justice and what we have to understand, that what is justice in cases like this. And this is important for us to understand, in the sense that if we feel that we are victims in this society, or we're not getting justice, there is a way for us to deal with this situation. So for example, if you don't like what has happened to Bill Cosby and you say, oh, justice wasn't served, this is wrong, the conventional mode of thinking is to, let's go protest. Okay, or let's get a more powerful attorney. Let's fire his legal team and get a more powerful attorney, or let's pay off the judge, as you'll see that some individuals do. That has happened. I'm not saying in this case. So there are these means to go about it, but the real power lies into tapping into your God man, God woman, who you are. And I want you to understand that. But first, let me show you how our ancient ancestors, the Kemetic people, looked at justice and the whole idea about justice. Okay, because this is important for us to understand to get to where we need to go. All right. So let's look at this. All right. This is the ancient papyri, and I'm looking at it from the papyri of Anai and the Ma'at judgment scene, the Hall of Ma'at, and the 42 negative confessions. What you'll see here is Sebek, or Anubis, escorting the dead. In this case, it will be Ani, or Anai, to the judgment. Okay, and here we have Amit. He is the devourer of souls. We have Tehuti. We have Heru, and over here on the far right, which you can't see, is Oser. And so the whole idea here is that your heart is weighed on the scale against the feather. And if your heart is lighter than the feather, meaning you're light-hearted, then you were allowed to pass on. However, if your heart was heavier than the feather, then Amet, the devourer of souls, would devour you. Okay? Now, in practical terms, what does this all mean? Your consciousness, who you are, is Tehuti, and Tehuti judges you. Okay, because there's a wisdom faculty within you, and Tehuti's a scribe. So Tehuti's recording everything you do in life. Okay, and then those things are played back after you die, and you have to say, in other words, did you live by these principles? And usually what these principles are your soul contract. Okay, you agree to certain things and to live a certain way before you come to earth. All right, so they will look and see, or Tehuti will see, if you have lived up to the agreement that you made. And we talk about this as your incarnation objective or your destiny, okay? So now that's important, because it's an agreement that you make that you have to live out in this lifetime, all right? So to give you a a better representation of how this kind of plays out, let me play this for you. This should be interesting here. All right, so give me 1 second here. Now that's the dead person there. Okay, and that's Ma'at. Okay, so you have Ma'at placing the feather on the scale, and you have Anubis there, and then your heart is placed on the other end. So the whole idea, and I can't play the whole video, unfortunately, because YouTube will penalize me. Ma'at watch is on. And there's Amit. So basically his heart was heavier than the feather, so he was devoured. So what does this tell us? It tells us in life that we have to go through things as the observer, which is the all-seeing eye, and not have an emotional attachment to things. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have to understand that everything in the world, the individualization of things, are not the things themselves, meaning the mailbox is not a mailbox, the bus is not a bus, but they're symbols that stand in for reality. It's all a holographic experience. The key to it is that you cannot place a definition or a judgment upon it. Tahuti tells us that nothing has a quality in and of itself. All right, so life is essentially meaningless, but you impart meaning onto things. All right, and by imparting meaning onto things, you impart an emotion attached to it, because you cannot have an emotional reaction to something you don't know what it is or have a definition of it. You know, if I said that you're a wiggly-ware, you'll be like, what's a wiggly-ware? You wouldn't know how to react or respond. Well, I said wiggly-ware is a very positive individual who's very optimistic in all situations, you know, then you would have an emotional reaction to it. Oh, well, thank you so much, you know. So keep in mind that the goal, our goal in life, is to go through life without judgment, without attaching judgment to things, you know, which is why I say when you're watching the Cosby trial, it's something where you just become the observer. You know, you're not looking there and going, oh, I'm so happy we finally got justice. Or you're not looking and saying, no, this is a travesty of justice. You know, you're just kind of trying to be impartial to it. This is the Buddhist exercise that they've gone through their entire life, where they've practiced this detachment from things. And certain other religions, like the Krishnas, take it a little bit too far, where they actually give up all of their worldly possessions. Now, that doesn't work, you know, because the idea is to be surrounded by your worldly possessions, but not be attached to them. Now, let's get into the spiritual power aspect of this. All right? How do we do that? By saying this. No matter what the judgment is, right? And you have to understand that there are infinite number of parallel realities. So there is another instance of this being played out where Cosby is found innocent. All right? But then why are you in this reality where he's found guilty? Because this reality, for some way, shape, or form, serves you. And it may serve you in the sense as to awakening the God power within you to realize that if you don't like what is happening, you can immediately shift to a parallel world where there's the exact opposite going on, which is to your liking and aligned to what you want. Do you understand what I mean? So, as I said before, when Trump became president, people were like, oh, this is the end, you know. Well, if you are here in this reality where Trump is president, then it serves you for some reason. Whereas in another reality, Hillary is president, and individuals have branched off and become part of her reality. Maybe friends that you are no longer in contact with have now shifted to that reality. So when we're looking at this Cosby trial, if we think it's a travesty of justice, then you have the God-given right to shift to a new reality, to where he's found innocent. You don't have to protest. You don't have to go out there and try to get legislation changed or get upset and say, we hate you, NBC, or whatever. You have to understand that the way that the world is imprisoned today is because it has stripped from you the knowledge of the power that you have within. You are a powerful being who has the ability to overcome obstacles and challenges in your life by tuning into Osir within. But the reason you don't do this is because you were brought up in a society that's ruled by the ruling elite, the 1% that is hell-bent on destroying this planet. And the way they can do that is first to strip you of the understanding that you have power within. And they get you trapped in left brain linear thinking. So left brain only understands the physical senses, what it can see, feel, hear, and touch. It doesn't understand the metaphysical aspects. It doesn't understand the non-linear. All it thinks about is Cartesian logic. Cosby's guilty. I have to get signs and protests. Cosby did something wrong to me, so I have to get a lawyer and sue Cosby. There are other means and avenues for which you can go about doing things. Let's say, for example, I'm going to give you an example, and this is partially true. I wanted to start a business in Virginia, and that business was growing oranges, and basically I got a tip from the stock market that next year, the stocks for oranges are going to go through the roof. So I said I want to start an orange business, and I'm going to hire some of my Mexican brothers and sisters to work with me and give them a good wage and improve the quality of their life, right? And I'm going to also hire the people locally, okay? So as I'm making these plans, in the area of Virginia that I'm from, a friend of mine's pointed out, well, I know you're sincere about this, Ron, and you want to give people all these opportunities for you, and give them opportunities, and they'll work hard for you and all that. But I have to be honest with you that there are no orange trees in that part of Virginia. So you're going to go down there, and there's going to be a barren wasteland. So at that point, I looked at him and I said, I will make orange trees down there. I will make it. Because I know how to shift to a new reality where orange trees do grow in that part of Virginia. Do you understand what I'm saying? That the ancient Egyptians said Haruka-Huti is the god of war, god of justice. And they say Haruka-Huti makes a way where there is no way. So you as a magi, as a magician, you have to learn that obstacles don't mean anything to you as God man, God woman. That you shape your reality. That the reality that you are experiencing is only an illusion that changes based upon your strongest belief system. And for those of you who haven't gotten it yet, get the book, Reality Transurfing. And this spells it all out by the Russian quantum physicist Vedam Zeland. And he breaks it all down. And he talks about the pendulums. He talks about the changing and shifting to new realities. So if I don't like the Cosby verdict, I can shift to a new reality where the verdict is one to my liking. Does that make sense? So there's no need to get up in arms about things. There's no need to have an emotional attachment to something because I know I can change it. Now, I'm not saying the change is easy for all. For some, it's going to take some work, because we're not used to relying upon the power within. And in the I don't have it in front of me, but the great I-Ching oracle, the I-Ching, and if you're a Patreon supporter, I've uploaded the oracle there for you to use, tells us that you let your magic tortoise go. That's one of the sayings, the ancient Chinese sayings, meaning that you now have let go of your inner ability, your inner magical power. And now you're relying on just physical things to get you to where you need to go. And sometimes in life, there are obstructions that you can't overcome physically. You know, I see these motivational speakers all the time talk about if you just work hard, it's motivation. I wake up every day with passion in my heart. This is how I'm able to build my empire, build my business. Well, if you're born a person of color in this country, you already got a strike against you. If you're born as a person of color and a male, you're a number one target. You're number one target. You understand? To where you could be just eating a bowl of cereal in your apartment, minding your own business, and there's a knock at the door, and you open it. There's a police officer standing by, and she pulls the gun and shoots you, and you're shot dead in your own apartment doing nothing. So you have to understand that this whole thing about these motivational speakers and talking about, you know, America is a place of opportunity. No, that's not necessarily so, because the very nature of capitalism means that there's some on top, but there also has to be some on the bottom. Are you part of the people on the bottom? And those on the bottom are there. A lot of them are there due to inheritance and legacy. So if you are the child of sharecroppers, you're coming into with no inheritance, no money, no nothing, no ability to do anything. And when I'm talking about that sometimes there's obstacles that you can't overcome, if you look at Bill Cosby, with all of his money and his ability to hire the best attorneys, still could not get out of this situation. So if you truly feel that the situation is unjust, then you have to learn to tap into spiritual power, to tap into something else, because there's no way of going about it any other way. And if you look at the Haitian Revolution, one of the things they did to liberate themselves was turn to what? Voodoo. Was turn to their religion. And that played a major component in Toussaint Overture to gaining their liberation and their freedom. But you have modern media now, which is trying to vilify these ancient cultures and ancient religions, because they don't want you to tune into this power. Because if you were to tune into your power and come into the realization that you are Osir, it will be over for the ruling elite. Can you imagine the masses manipulating reality and changing things? Or even coming to a consensus like we talked about the 100 monkey principles? That would be a game changer. It would change things practically overnight. This is why they keep you polarized in left brain linear thinking. You have an issue, take it to court. You don't have enough money to take it to court or to afford a lawyer, tough you. But this is a land of opportunity. You know, how many people are behind bars right now who are innocent of crimes? And that now with the technology, with DNA technology, they're now being freed after spending 30, 40 years in jail for something they didn't do. So what I'm saying is that we're taught to live our lives in a certain way. We have to throw out that rule book and say, that's not going to work. I have to use alternative means and measures to get myself out of this situation that I'm in. Because the thing that the ruling elite wants to do is to destroy you. They're not here. I mean, you know, one of the things I said when I was a filmmaker, right? And I remember this even from a child and watching the old Westerns, because, you know, Westerns were my favorite. And I was saying, why is it that every movie, every TV show says the good guy always wins? But that is not true. And even as a kid, I knew that. And as I got older and became a filmmaker, I got tired of seeing the stories where the bad guys would shoot these guns and they would miss the good guy. He would never get hit. And I'm like, well, that's not reality, because in the world that I'm living in, the good guys are always getting hit. They're always going down. I have a good friend who's an attorney, and he told me this. Honestly, he said, if you're looking for justice, don't look for it in the court system. And that is true. When we see people like George Zimmerman, you know, who murdered this kid, and now he's out there aligning himself with white supremacists and neo-Nazi movement signing bags of Skittles for them, we have to ask ourselves, well, why isn't it that we have done something to ensure that there's justice? Because our mind is so trapped on one way of approaching this that we throw our hands up and say, well, the court system said he's innocent, George Zimmerman gets to walk, we can't do anything. No, that's not how it happened in ancient times. In ancient Kemet, the priesthood was the most powerful organization there was. And if you opposed them, which Akhenaten did, what did they do? They wiped his family line out through magic, through the mystical arts. They didn't bring him up to court and have an impeachment. We're going to impeach Pharaoh Akhenaten. No. They said, this ain't happening. Did a ritual and poof, he was gone. And went to the hieroglyphics, the Metu Neter, and erased everything about him. They're like, he's done, he's done. Well, they erased everything. So that's how we know about him today, because there's still hieroglyphics there that talk about his reign. But what I'm saying to you is that you don't have to live in a world and accept things as they are. If there is, if you want employment and you're finding it difficult, then shift to a new reality where jobs are plentiful. All it takes is a strong belief system and embodying the emotion of what it's like to have a job. And if you can hold that frame for a good amount of time, it's like looking in a mirror, right? And you're expecting the mirror to smile. Well, it can't smile, because the mirror is reality, hypothetically. It can't smile until you smile. All right? So when you project the emotion of what it's like to have that job, and you smile, then reality smiles back at you. And then it conforms to the observer. And if you study quantum physics, they talk about that reality. They looked at the subatomic particles and they said they were responding to the observer. So whenever the observers had in their mind a thought as to how the particles should react, the particles reacted exactly according to their expectations. So reality is just bouncing off your belief system. It's just mimicking your belief system. So if you don't like something, change your belief system. Change what you believe. I said before that there's some people who are in the reality where Trump is president and some who are in the reality where Hillary is president. What is the difference? Your belief system. Your belief system determines what parallel world you will shift to. Whether your belief system is one of positivity or one of fear or one of negativity, you're going to go wherever it is because it doesn't differentiate. So keep that in mind. You don't like what's going on, whether it be Cosby trial, whether it be George Zimmerman, whether it be, who's elected president. You don't have to protest. You don't have to change legislation. All you got to do is say, this is not the reality that I want. I'm going to change my belief system to one that aligns to what I want. And I'm going to hold that frame for as long as it takes until reality conforms to that. So with that, I'm going to bring this to a close, my beloved, and I'm going to thank you all for tuning in to this broadcast. I hope you have found this broadcast of value, and I hope it helps you to understand a little bit more about how you should detach from emotionally investing in things, because when you emotionally invest in things, you get involved in what they call the Hegelian dialectic, meaning you get polarized in left and right, and that sets you up to have enemies. I'm good, you're bad, this is right, this is wrong. No, you're not supposed to be thinking in those terms, because then that creates factions and divisions and battles and wars, and that's how the ruling elite play us. Like a grand piano. They are the puppet masters. And they get us to subscribe to either feminism, men's rights, white supremacists, black nationalism. They want us to pick a side, but I choose neither. I choose neither to invest in those emotionally. I just choose to shift to a new reality, the one that I like. And I'm not going to be caught up emotionally in if it happens or not. And that's another prerequisite. Hold on to the emotion, regardless of whether you see it happening in the real world or not. And it will happen. You just got to give it time, because we live in space-time continuum. We live in the fourth dimension, 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. And then when you ascend to the 5th dimension, all things become one. And the minute you think of something, it materializes, because there's no time and space in the 5th dimension. Do you understand what I'm saying? So don't forget to hit the like button if you've liked this video. Share it with family and friends. And until my next live broadcast, this is Kesank Ma'at Keperu, son of Ma'at and Tahuti, Amen Ra.